Welcome to the Five Towns Jewish Times podcast, bringing you the latest stories, insights, and conversations that matter most to you and your community. Here is your host, Larry Gordon.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Five Towns Jewish Times podcast. We've been a boring print publication for 26 years, and there's no need really to come into the electronic age, but we figured we'd try it anyway. My co-host is my wife of many years, Esther Gordon, right here. I'm Larry Gordon, and our guest, one of our first guests in one of our first podcasts, though, is an old friend, not old, a young friend.
Older, bolder, and better.
But older, bolder, and better, like he says, Gavriel Sanders, who is, we go back a long way because, for several reasons. Primarily because one of the first issues of the paper...
Number 3.
Was it number 3?
Yes.
The third edition of the Five Towns Jewish Times back in 2000?
Yes.
The year 2000, I guess.
Black and orange ink.
Oh,
It was
that's
orange.
Right. It was black and orange. It was
November.
Orange.
You know, the reason it was
the
Halloween. It was
31st.
Halloween
Right.
weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind telling the story, but it was Halloween weekend. It's the only issue that we published with orange ink because we were running late. We were printing at a printer, and we weren't a regular customer there, so we were running late. And I go into the place on a Thursday afternoon, and I see the guy's on a ladder, and he's scooping out orange ink from the printer. I said to him, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm taking out the orange ink so I could clean it out and put in black ink." I said, "Just print it with the orange ink. I don't have time for that." So he printed the issue in orange. You have a copy of that?
I do.
That's fantastic.
I was thinking of putting it up on eBay for, 25, 30 cents.
Well, wait. It could be worth at least
$1.
At least the price of an ounce of gold. I would hope.
I wish.
I would hope. Anyway, we go back a long way, and there's a lot to discuss. You live in Israel today.
I do.
And when I met you, you had newly converted to Judaism.
Not even a year yet.
What's that?
It wasn't even a year yet.
It wasn't a year yet.
Wow.
Today, today it's not so unusual to find people that have converted to Judaism. But it was unique. It was much more unique then. Did you feel that you were breaking some ground back in 2000?
I had met others. So for me, it was just the next indicated step in a long trajectory. And so it's interesting because when people talk to people with my background, they have various reactions. Sometimes it's circus sideshow kind of, oh, that's an oddity, and they move on. Or others really want to dig deeper and find out, what was it like for you? What was it that attracted to you? With so many Jews walking out the door, there's a bit of wonderment as to why is somebody coming into this whole milieu.
But in what type of circumstances does the subject come up, unless you're hired as a guest lecturer, specifically because you were once a minister in a church in California and then became an Orthodox Jew? Why does that even come up in conversation, unless you're hired to speak specifically about that?
Well, that happens, but sometimes even in business it comes up. I was just in the city with someone today, and it was germane to our conversation because of the way things were going, and it became quite a conversation piece for a little while, and then there was a whole conversation about, well, how do we integrate this into the project that we're working on and so forth, and I'm going, please, I don't want to go down that road. So for me today, 25 plus years later of life under a yarmulke, I can tell you that I'm very, very much at home. I've been in Judaism, living as a Jew, longer than I lived as a Christian. And so I like to say Haredi Christian because it kind of gives us a little sort of a niche that because there are 30,000 different groups of Christians around the world, unlike the more narrow, fewer than 10, fewer than 8 in Judaism. And people wondered, like, what's the attraction? I often say, well, it was Cholent. Cholent did it.
Cholent?
Cholent, yeah.
Cholent is what brought you in?
Well, the truth is that's a metaphor because a cholent is a blend of various normal ingredients that slow cooked over time can have quite the amazing taste to it. And I found that this blend or combination, I'll mix the metaphor a little bit and go with these various threads from Jewish thought that wove their way into my life, gave me a perspective that said, I want to do this. I remember very specifically when Rabbi Union of the RCC in California was pushing me away You have to do. I didn't know that there was this.
Well,
thing.
that's the norm.
Yes, the 3 times.
Yeah, 3 times.
So that was the first time he was telling me to go away. I forget the second time. I'll tell you the third time. It's a little embarrassing.
Yeah.
I was standing in the mikveh,
Yeah.
ready to
Ready-
go down in the water, right?
ready to
and,
the-
and here I have these
for the final
two,
dunk.
this Beit Din or Beis Din right there. And I'm bilingual, by the way. This Beis Din was right there in front of me, and they said, "Now you don't have to do this.
Yeah.
You know a lot about Judaism. You can be very effective as
Really?
a non-Jew. You can be a Noahide, a Noahide.
Yeah.
You can be a Noahide." I thought, but I no. I do what. At that time, the Noahide movement was far less developed than it is now, and I thought, what do I eat? What do I celebrate? Where do I marry? Where do I bury? All these different types of things. And so I just said to them, please remind me, what's the bracha again?
Yeah.
And so down I went.
Is there a Christian equivalent to cholent? Would you
Chili.
say? I don't know about that. Chili?
Yeah, it's mixed
I think
beans.
that's the
Yeah,
closest
that's what
thing.
everybody
Yeah,
says, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Cholent's unique.
Or
But
a
cholent
bean
is
soup.
unique. Cholent is unique in 2 ways, both in terms of how 3 ways: how
Okay,
it's made,
so I
how it
think-
tastes, and how much it costs.
So now
Slow
that
cooked.
now that we dealt with the more serious issues, let's get down to business. So I mean, there's even though Judaism is thousands of years old, and Christianity is right behind it somewhere, there seems to be a tension between the non-Jewish world and the Jewish world that seems to be accelerating today, especially today. I don't know if it's necessarily because of the war in Gaza, which has been dragging on. You live in Israel, you feel it more than anybody here. It's been dragging on, almost incessantly, and very difficult to see where the ending is going to be. But it's not just a war that the Israel military is fighting, which they're very proficient at doing, but it seems that the world at large, especially in the United States, is losing their patience. Do you sense that?
Yes, but I believe that there's a subtext to all of this, that this fuel, this growing fuel on the fire is not by accident. I believe it's orchestrated, choreographed, that there are people behind the scenes that we may never know about who are taking advantage of this. In the same way that we've seen for the last 40 years or so, there's been this slow, and we talk about cholent, this slow-cooked indoctrination, that the universities have switched from being centers of learning to centers of indoctrination. There was a great article on Fox today by Eric Patterson, I believe his name is, that talks about the shift in the youth today, particularly the youth today. And that would include the perspective about Jews, Judaism, the whole Palestinian situation, et cetera, and why it's becoming de rigueur to think about and allow the kind of not just verbal violence that's going on, but like what happened this last week with Charlie Kirk, that somehow that's found a niche of acceptability as a tactic for dealing with people that you don't agree with.
Well, we listen to a lot of podcasts, and
All day and all night.
yeah, mostly all night, and little snippets of it. And I heard someone say last night, I don't even know who.
Shall I
but,
remind you?
Who? Megyn Kelly?
Megyn Kelly said that
She's-
under 30,
Yeah, that
zero
Jews under the age of 30 are not supporting Israel anymore.
at all.
And I thought to myself, that's someone that really doesn't understand the Jewish community. And then these people that are pontificating and offering commentary on the nature of the Jewish community and our relationship with Israel are really completely ignorant about the subject. Because if you could say that the Jews in America under 30 are not supporting Israel, there's 100,000 teenagers in early 20s who are in Israel for the first time studying in yeshivas and seminaries. And that's just in the Orthodox world. There's a huge
Birthright.
there's a huge non-Orthodox component to education in Israel, whether it's Hebrew University or the Jewish Theological Seminary. They have large offices and great deal of programming there. So I don't know where these people come off with this idea that Jews under the age of 30 in America have had their fill with the war in Gaza, and they're not supporting Israel anymore.
So I think we have to distinguish between 2 basic groups here. There's the group that I would put within the very observant, if you want to call the Haredi community, the observant community, the whole spectrum of anyone that's, got more than 3 kids. And that pays tuition and sends them to the kinds of schools that
And also Modocs. It's not
Right.
just the very Haredi.
Yeah, the Modocs as well. exactly.
They have no idea.
You have to define
They
what
don't
Modoc
even know.
says.
They know Orthodox,
Right.
non-Orthodox. They just make these blanket
You know,
sentences.
I don't want to get too much on a tangent, Gavriel, but Donald Trump said when he was running for president, the first time and the second time, any
Right.
Jew that votes Democrat should have their head examined.
What's true?
But Donald Trump doesn't know what a Jew is. You can't define a Jew in America. There are so many different definitions and levels of what a Jew in America is that it's only a person that is completely uninformed about the subject can make a statement like any Jew that votes for. We have Jews in New York that are going to vote. 20% of Jews in New York are going to vote in November for
Mamdani.
Zoran Mandami, who has said
Mamzardani, yes.
in the last couple of days, he said that he wouldn't hesitate to have Prime Minister Netanyahu
Arrested.
Yes, I saw that.
arrested when he comes into New York. By the way, even though he has no authority to arrest anybody, he's not the police commissioner in New York City if he wins. He's the mayor. And any foreign dignitary that comes into the United States has diplomatic immunity.
That's right.
They could run down a whole block of people and they're going to go home that afternoon because they have diplomatic immunity.
But it's a great soundbite.
But he's making mindless statements. And
Wait, there's another statement that I think is very important to talk about today, and the statement that Candace Owens is now putting out there that it was Israel that put out the hit
Right.
on Charlie Kirk,
Right.
which beyond, even most of the leftists couldn't believe it, yet Megyn Kelly, who is, I thought, really doing a great job, I listened to her last night for about an hour and a half, and all she kept saying was, not everything Candace Owens says is a conspiracy theory, and some of the things she says is correct. I was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
How do you give credence to that?
So I'm pretty convinced in my own purview of things that some of these people are funded, paid off.
They are.
It could be something in their life it could be something nefarious on the one hand, and it could be something simply the attraction of a whole lot of money in some other respect.
With her, by the way, with Megyn, she's very close to Tucker, and I guess she sees that Tucker is being taken care of. So, hey,
That was Tucker
Carlson.
Carlson, right?
Yes,
Yes. Right.
Carlson.
Carlson. Meanwhile, Candace Owens was saying also yesterday that about something about somebody got a lot of money
okay.
for the hit, or she kept saying money about Israel. No, Tucker Carlson is getting the money.
And as far as Candace Owens is concerned, the fact of the matter is she is an addict in terms of conspiracy theories. And you could say that these conspiracy theories get her a lot of hits.
Clickbait. Yeah.
That's right, clickbait, exactly.
That's the term today. So let me back up a second, because
Sure.
you've said so many interesting, your river of thought is dividing into so many fascinating tributaries. We learned to say that in the Preacher Factory, by the way, to speak
Yeah.
in colorful, metaphorical ways. So I'm
Okay, I
afflicted
got
with
you.
it.
I'm
Metaphors
following
be
you.
with you, by the way. Coming back to the issue of Jewish youth, I actually taught Jewish history, modern Jewish history, starting from the printing press, actually, the first internet, if you will, and going on down through the history of Israel. And I saw that with my high school students. I taught one of the better-known high schools here. And I saw how, not resistant, but I guess passive was the attitude to discover where one has come from. And if you don't know where you've come from, you surely don't have a good heading on where you're supposed to be going or want to be going. I met a young lady not too long ago in Yerushalayim and we were at an event at the Israel Museum. I said, have you ever been to the Israel Museum before? She said, no. I said, have you really studied anything about Jewish history? Well, no. And I mentioned a few names and events in history, not any awareness whatsoever. And I think that's not just particular to her, it's endemic to a whole generation. The article I cited from Fox today from Eric Patterson notes that even teachers of history in the public school system skip over whole sections So the basis of the article was why 62% of students today are favoring socialism. That's a huge number. And they think they're going to get all these trinkets and everything's entitled, and they're going to still live a first world existence, lifestyle, which of course has never been the case. And so what we have here is I believe, a deliberate dumbing down since we were all in school. We had a broad education, an encompassing education that gave us a perspective. And even though I was a high school dropout, at least I was a voracious reader and I wanted to know things. And so when I went on and then got to college and did things, I really wanted to know. And when I came to Judaism, I really wanted to know the history. I spent extensive amounts of time studying Jewish history and finding out all the various streams of thought and the philosophers and the conflicts.
Yeah, but you're an unusual person, and
I've been told that.
I come from a different age when if you wanted to know something, you had to read about it. Now, all you have to do is subscribe to TikTok, and
That's
you get
it. It's all
you
TikTok.
can get a master's degree in about 45 seconds. If you just watch a couple of.
It's not coincidental. This was all planned.
Someone's going to give you some kind of a degree for watching enough TikToks at some point. I can tell you, I don't have TikTok on my phone. I have never watched anything on
TikTok?
TikTok.
TikTok,
I've never watched TikTok that I was not already on X for some reason, and my stuff on X is the algorithms have me pegged as being interested in one thing, and everything about Israel, and I can't get into another subject. It's like everything they send me is something to do with the war in Israel and something to do with Netanyahu, and I don't know how to get out of it, so I have to figure out how to forge a new identity as far as X is concerned.
Yeah, open a new account.
I have to open a new account. I have to get multiple phones. I went in 2020. We went to a Trump fundraiser in New York at Cipriani's, and they took away our phones. And they locked it into a bag. They gave us back our locked phones, so no one could take their phone out and record them. But there's one guy that came with 2 phones, and he was able to record them. Of course, the Secret Service only figured out they could take out 1 phone from each person. They didn't figure that the average person is going to be carrying more than 1 phone. So at least we got a little bit of the speech of Trump's remarks with that guy that had the 1 phone. But I think we're living in very unusual and troubled times. On the one hand, it is for Israel. But when I hear Megyn Kelly say last night that America's turning its back on Israel, I don't think it's accurate. I don't think Donald Trump or Marco Rubio or Pete Hegseth
Or 70 million Christian Zionists.
I don't think 77 million people that voted for Trump. I don't think they're turning their back on Israel, but at the same time, they'd like us to think that. In fact, when I hear that, I think to myself about Bilam's prophecy, that he looks into the future, and he's the only personality figure in all of the Torah that sees into the future and tells the prophecy about the future of the Jewish people. And he says that it's a nation that will dwell alone. And we've been spending the last 3,000 years trying to be accepted by everyone, including at the United Nations. And they can't figure out a more definitive way to reject us, to get rid of us, at least not get rid of us physically, but
so
I
have a thought on that.
They tried that
toss
already.
Your way, which is that according to the prophet Isaiah, Yeshayahu, what is the brief, terse tafkid of the Jewish people in the world? To be a
light.
Be a light of the nations.
Dear Tachton, the Lubavitch Rebbe writes, what's the tachlis of the Bria? Why did God create? There's 1 billion planets out there, and there's one planet Earth there's 8 billion people and just 15 million Jews. Adira Tachton. We're supposed to create a lower world that is filled with godliness. And so your question is, what does Dira Tachton mean? What is Tachton?
Lower.
Tachton means low, up. But the Rebbe explains, Tachton she'ein lemata bimenu. Low, that is nothing lower than that type of lowness. And God knows we are seeing that today. We are just digging down to new depths of lowness.
So I want to hitchhike on what Esther said because these really blend together. You can't be a light to the nations if your agenda is to be liked by the nations or like the nations. So I think that's a kind of an internal conflict of interest that everybody has a tafkid, everyone has a goral, everybody has a ya'ad, a destination, everyone has a function in this world. And there's an individual function and there's a collective function. And collectively, the Jewish people are to be a light bearer and an example of a higher powered way of living. But there's this, remember the children's story about, are you my mother? Are you my mother? And so for the Jewish people wandering through the world, are you my identity? Are you my friend? Are you the ones we saw, going back to teaching Jewish history and seeing the French Revolution and the Reformation in Germany, where the Jews came out of the shtetl and got into business, and they were a Jew at home, but a man in the street. And there was this whole effort to be like everybody else. And even under that circumstance, starting in the 1840s, ultimately led to what happened in the 1930s and 40s, where it's like they've become like us. They're our professors, they're in our businesses, they're running our banks, and look what happened. So there's such a dearth, and I recommend all the time for people to go to a website that's not easy to forget because it's called simpletoremember.com. And
Simple to remember?
Simpletoremember.com, yeah. And there's an excellent article there. It's been there for years on asking the question, will your grandchildren be Jewish? And it's a demographic study, and it's graphic as well as demographic. And you look at that and you see that the only ones in the Jewish spectrum that are going to have any positive growth are in the Modocs world and the Haredi world, and that those who identify themselves today as conservative, reform, or unaffiliated are going to be dodo birds. There's just no other way to say it. They're going to be extinct. So you can have a lot of Shapiros and Horowitzes and Katzes running around that simply aren't Jewish. All right.
Right.
We have a lot of that now.
It's already like that.
And then we have Martinez that are Jewish.
Yes, that's right. And Gonzalez and Sanchez.
And Gonzalez,
yes, that's right.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So listen, you have a very illustrious background, and we're going to have to obviously do this again in the future. But just for people that don't, there are people that you're a Jew 25 years already, right? So there are conceivably many people listening to this and watching this that never heard your story before.
So there's a really good website called Meaningful People.
Yeah, and
you have somebody you might know.
Yes, we are the producers of
Yes,
Meaningful People.
Yes, and
Yes,
not the producers.
Technically, we are.
We didn't produce the program, but
produced him.
we produced him. Yes.
Very good. Well done. Well, Nochi and Momo did an hour and a half with me that tells the whole thing, and I think some 20,000 plus people have at least clicked on it for some period of time. So the expanded, amplified version of the story is there. If somebody wants it Bekitzer, are you asking me to render it in Bekitzer?
Instead of going through that, we could send them to.
Thank you. Please do that.
To Meaningful People,
Because I'm working on other more meaningful things today, besides my own history.
So I mean, but just, what do are you finding in Israel? People that are in the process of conversion or thinking about conversion.
Sure.
They're non-Jews living in Israel, and they're conflicted. They don't know which way to go. And what's that population like?
No, that's an immeasurable niche. So because there's no gathering place for them to be, for statistics to be drawn from that. There are, ironically, so many people. First of all, let's talk about Aliyah. Aliyah is continuing upwardly. More and more are coming. And I think part of it is reading the signs of the times here. I've heard people say here in the New York area, if Mamdani gets in, they're heading elsewhere. Yeah,
well, so, Mr. Mamdani comes in, it's a very bad sign for America. It's a very bad sign for the Democratic Party. Maybe I'm too much of an optimist. I don't see it impacting on Jews. At this point in time, because he's not going to be able to do 99.5% of the things that he's campaigning on. He won't be able to do, because President Trump has made it very clear the second he takes office, all federal funding to New York City is stopping. So the guy wants to give everything away for free. So good luck figuring out the math on that one.
I was so looking for the free grocery store.
Yeah. Well, there is free Palestine, just go to your local grocery and see if they have any Palestine left, because it is free. I was telling these gentlemen here that are recording this that I saw a guy in a supermarket pushing a wagon around.
I think it was on TikTok.
They asked him what he's looking for. He said he's looking for Palestine. He heard it's free. Is Palestine a cheese? What is Palestine?
So I don't see that. My problem is that him winning represents something, and that's what scares me.
Right.
winning, not winning, but the fact that he's so ahead.
Yeah, it
And
represents
so many Jews
It represents
in New York.
it represents the downfall of the Democratic Party. Chuck Schumer, who is the highest Jewish elected official in the United States of America,
get rid of him.
has not been able to endorse him. Okay, Madami's a Democratic candidate. Schumer's the highest Democratic elected official, and he just wrote the book on anti-Semitism. And Madami's a very proud anti-Semite. I like to see those guys figure that out. And Hakeem Jeffries, who is Hakeem Jeffries, can't endorse him either because he's facing a House election that if Mandami gets elected, the effort to get Sliwa and Adams to pull out so Cuomo can beat Mandami has stopped.
It's not working.
Because the strategy stopped. Let them all stay in the race and let Mandami win because that is going to be the death knell of the Democratic Party leading into 2026, I believe. Because they're going to be putting up, because they'll be so encouraged by their success in New York, they'll be putting up these leftist, extreme, anti-Israel, anti-Jewish candidates all over the country.
They will. And
huge businesses are going to leave.
That's right.
So are there a lot of
that's about money.
You watch Wall Street move to Miami or something.
Right.
So we were talking about non-Jews that live in Israel, and you were saying that it's really not a congealed type of community. It's really ragtag, and no meeting place for people that are interested in exploring, converting into Judaism.
There is an institute that helps people like that who do come to do that. A lot of people don't really talk about it. There is a significant Christian, like Protestant, or what I like to use the term, Haredi Christian community there.
Well, Israel has a lot of problems. I read this year that there are at least 30 Messianic synagogues in Israel.
You're way off in your number.
60?
You're way off in your number.
It's much more than 60?
Yeah,
180.
More than 100, yeah.
More than 100.
Estes
I mean, that could be a whole different subject.
It is a huge subject in itself.
I don't understand that. I don't understand that.
Okay, so
I do. I understand it.
What do you understand about it?
What do you understand?
I understand that, first of all, I think a big problem in Israel is they really don't learn historia.
Right.
They're not, a lot of the Jews that are Jewish really don't know what they're doing. It's frightening that they don't know the core importance of their religion, or that has nothing to do with the non-religious, but I'm afraid that the Messianic will be able to have a field day because a lot of the kids there,
they're looking for something. They're looking for something,
right?
And they're finding something.
I had a friend back in the 1970s. His name was Shlomo Sherman. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He wrote a book called Escape from Jesus.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that book.
I have that book. I had the book in my house somewhere, and I had him as a guest on a radio program a lot of years ago.
You may still have that tape.
And he told me that he was a kid that got turned on to Christianity because he was raised in a Jewish household, but there was nothing religious about it, and he was looking for some kind of spirituality. So he found Jesus,
I'll give you a really simple soundbite, because so many people like them today, that I harvested from a former Messianic Jew, married to a non-Jew. He went through a conversion, and she became frum. And she said there are two sides to the Jewish coin, and if you don't have both of them, you have an imbalance. One side is the how. And we teach that very well with halakha, things that you can measure and that are visible. Like how many blot Gemara did you learn? How many midos did you study? How many mitzvahs did you do? These things we emphasize the behavioral visible. But the other side of that coin is not just the how, it's the wow. There's a point of wonderment. That's one of the reasons why Hasidus, for example, is attractive to so many people. I was very attracted to that, Musar, the philosophy of Rabbi Nachman. So this is where the wow abides. You have to have both, because you have to have a track to run on. That's what we call halakha. It's how you have to walk. But the how without the wow can become very dry, and you have these kids who go to yeshiva for 12 years, and they turn out that not only can't they speak Hebrew, they don't really have a settled hashkafa that gives them a relationship with the Creator. And what Christianity, one of the reasons it's so attractive, is it talks about having a personal relationship with God. JC becomes your buddy. He knows
Yeah.
all your problems. He's been here. He
Yeah.
knows what it's like. And so there's that human identification factor. We have all of these same things in Judaism that can really satisfy the hole in the soul, as we call it. And yet, again, because it's in a domain that maybe is a little too fuzzy, warm fuzzy for
Or
some people's
it's
tastes.
not being taught.
Right, I know.
It's not being taught.
Either it's too rigid or it's not being taught.
Right.
Listen,
And that turns them off either way.
Charlie Kirk barely, Oliver Shalom barely said a sentence without referring to JC.
Right.
And he's coming out with a book now about keeping
Shabbos,
Shabbos, believe it
right.
or not. And someone said the other day, Cassie Akiva, who was
She's
on
great.
with Nahi,
Cassie Akiva.
Yes.
said the other day that since she's speaking about Charlie Kirk and her relationship with him and how she communicated with him, she says that she's gotten Instagram messages and text messages from people, Jews, who said in the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk assassination and her speaking about it and the coverage and his relationship with his exploration of Shabbos, what he calls Shabbat, she says she started getting text messages and emails from people that are Jews that said they kept Shabbos for the first time in their
Right.
lives recently.
Let me tell you a very fast story in my own program, the Gavriel Sanders Show, that is on Talkline Network each week on Sundays. Last Friday, someone called me from Jerusalem and said, there's a story in the Jerusalem Post that you have to know about. I said, okay, what is it? Charlie Kirk made a Jew a Baal Tshuva. I said, really? What's his name? His name's Adam Scharf. He's in the public domain now, so he's a 31-year-old attorney, corporate attorney in the city. 10 years ago, he was on the University of Oregon campus. Charlie came to connect with students more clandestinely. It wasn't a Turning Point event. He met with them in a little room off the library. They were talking about how to flip the student government from blue to red. For that process took a few years, but for Adam, he had a connection with Charlie, and Charlie began to speak to his own spiritual needs. And he didn't say to him, you need to believe like I believe. He wasn't trying to create a
You
cookie
need to
cutter.
believe.
He said, you need to believe. You need to find your history, your heritage, who you are as a Jew. Fast forward, Adam goes to Machon Shlomo for a couple of years, comes back, finishes up his education. Today he's living a completely Torah-observant life. We had a couple conversations this last week. It's quite the conversation piece because you would expect. Now, maybe Charlie shifted and became more evangelistic in the last 10 years. I think that's probably the case.
Yeah.
However, he is legendary for helping people. I said to somebody today, it's like almost he had lahavdil, a kind of nevuah about him that could see what someone needed and to become and to grow into. So I think we're going to, just speaking to maybe wrap up on the Charlie Kirk whole ripple effect, he has changed history, I believe, for a younger generation. The fact that there were like 1,000 applications for Turning Point chapters on campus now, this week, 30,000 applications.
Do you think he'll continue to be effective?
Yes, I do. I think many people are going to pick up his torch and carry the message
They call
forward.
them mini Charlie Kirks. They
Yes.
going to go out to the colleges.
And I think it's going to have an effect on the Jewish world as well. And that's really what my current activity right now is, to do something about the situation on campus, even though I'm in Israel, and we're moving puzzle pieces in place to affect that whole realm, with the ultimate aim of getting more and more students to Israel, because Israel is magical.
Yes.
One last story I'll tell you. Is the name Michelle Bachmann known to you?
Of course.
Right.
She was a congresswoman
That's
Right.
right. She was in Congress.
from Minnesota, I think.
That's right. And today she's the
Israel Authority.
right. Today she's the dean of the School of Government for Regent University, which is part of the whole CBN Pat Robertson world. Gordon runs it now. So I happened to spend some time with her last year at a conference in Jerusalem. We actually walked down to the Kotel together and had a long conversation. And I said, how did you get so involved in being an advocate for Israel? When she was 18 years old, she went to volunteer in a kibbutz for 6 months. What kibbutz? Be'eri, in the Gaza envelope. 18 years old, 6 months, forever shifted the trajectory of her life. And today, in her 60s, she's the head of the School of Government. One of their sub-projects under the leadership of Dr. A.J. Nolte, who has a podcast called Blind Politics, because he's blind, and very articulate, amazing person. And he is tasked with creating 100 PhDs that are all pro-Israel, pro-Jewish, to plant them in the State Department, in various parts of business, education, people of influence, 100 of them. That's what they're working on right now through the Israel Initiative. So that's why we have to get more and more people to Israel. I believe we need to get certainly more Jewish students there for short and long-term study. But also I think we need to get more Christians there as well, so that Israel ceases to be a theory or a two-dimensional map and becomes a living reality for them.
Someone told me recently, and we'll end with this, but someone told me recently that they think that once they clean up Gaza, that Gaza should become a community where the Trump administration advocates and encourages Christians from the United States to move to Gaza, to live there, to live in Gaza. There's plenty of room there. Already I read today that 400,000 Palestinians have moved out. They've had enough. They don't want any more. It'll take 10 to 15 years to rebuild the place. And one of the reasons they don't want the Palestinians to stay is not because they're trying to rush them out. That's the, unfortunately,
they can't stay there now.
They can't stay there now because aside from all the buildings being collapsed,
Right.
there's 30,000 unexploded bombs and other types of ordnance that are, either been fired by the Hamas or fired by Israel into Gaza. Not everything explodes, and you never know when it's going to explode. Mm-hmm. So, but I think Trump has a vision as a builder of what the Gaza can look like, and I think the Palestinians that live there and live in poverty and live being so abused by Hamas and even by the Palestinian Authority all these years have had enough, and the younger generation wants to go on and live their life. I wasn't a mistake me calling you to do one of our first podcasts. I met you by accident the other night in shul. There's no accidents, but when I saw you at Maariv, I said, "Oh, that's the program I'm doing tomorrow." Before we even said hello. So I thank you very much for your time and for sharing some of your ideas with us.
Just want to remind people that according to the Hamas charter and the Palestinian charter, the PA, they don't want peace with Israel. They want every piece of Israel. That's the end game. Mm-hmm. And we need to remember that, and that anything of a temporary truce is just that. It's temporary to gain a tactical advantage.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's not a political or a militant conflict. It's a theological conflict. And people understand that because we're so secular in this society. So people need to go and study and learn that. If anybody wants to talk to me about that, you can reach me at gavrielradio@gmail.com.
That's great. I know where to find you now. So thanks very much for your time.
My honor, my pleasure. Thank you
and
both.
Thanks very much for listening.
Yeah.